Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.
Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Jean Till, and on today's show, well, the tables are turned a little bit, and Bishop Joensen is going to be my guest. He just celebrated
control here.
Yeah. I'm taking it back. You just had your 4th anniversary.
Indeed,
of being our
what
bishop.
A grace. Where did it go?
I don't know. I remember.
Sometimes it seems only like 8 years. Sometimes like 2 years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you want to make it personal with Bishop Joensen. You always ask people questions about, where they've come from and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, we heard those things 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we forget some of those details.
Okay.
And plus, now that we know you, we want to ask some other things. So we're going to do that today. And I want to thank you for letting me.
Appreciation we were plunging in on here.
Yeah.
So, Jean, and you've been part of this all along. So thank you.
Well, and, I always like to look at what our saints are for, the day that we're having our show. But on your anniversary of your ordination with St. Vincent de Paul.
Indeed, St. Vincent de Paul, and obviously the apostle to the poor, Louise Marillac, who kind of the patroness of social workers. So that day, hopefully that gospel simplicity and the poverty of spirit that we are to embrace, certainly Pope Francis is called, and I am a Pope Francis bishop who's, the Holy Father who has appointed me, and to be a church of the poor, a poor church, but that may not be the first thing that people think of when it comes to mind. So I'm trying to, evermore be converted in this way. And I think that sense of detachment, that sense of allowing what God places before us to revel in those moments of celebration with people, but also those things that maybe have been wrested from me, and things that were part of my life, my reputation, my comfort, all those things, was kind of starting afresh. And so one feels very small at times, but God, I think, draws us up. I'm conscious of St. Vincent in some of his own conferences to his own confreres as well. What sort of men will they be who strive to turn us away from the good works they've begun? They will be free thinkers who seek nothing but pleasure and amusement, provided they have a good dinner. They do not trouble their heads about anything else, who besides, better not say it. And then he places his hands under his armpits, imitating the lazy. And then he gets a little bit bracing. "O wretch, you are an old man who resembles them. Little things seem great to you, and difficulties overwhelm you. Yes, gentlemen, even such a little thing as getting up in the morning seems a great affair to me, and the slightest little obstacles seem insurmountable. But let us hold fast, my brothers. Let us hold fast for the love of God. He will be faithful to his promises. God will never abandon us so long as we remain fully obedient to him for the fulfillment of his designs. Let us remain within the bounds of our vocation." And so heartening words and remaining within the bounds, the obedience that I have, not only to the Holy Father, obviously to our Lord, but I think as even the graces of people who fall under my oversight and my authority. But I think it's we found to develop a very mutual relationship, and the pandemic was certainly part of that too.
Right. Welcome to the diocese.
Right.
There's a pandemic.
The little baby bishop school in Rome 2 weeks before I was ordained. They didn't have a chapter on that. That wasn't in the playbook, So, but very interesting. So
I love that you call it the baby bishop school because we kind of heard that, but I didn't know that it was something that the bishops actually called it.
Yes, it's okay. It's not slandering or any way, but no, but that familiarity. So, I think to get up in the morning, the gratitude for vocation, the life that my parents gave me, the faith that they imparted to me. My dad, obviously, I believe, interceding for me and my siblings, and my mom, who's receiving care, especially from my brother David right now, but beacons in their own vocation and their fidelity to God. And so whatever crosses befall us, I think that way to be, in spirit, to know that the Lord will remain faithful to us. And certainly through the people of the Diocese of Des Moines and beyond, I have felt that presence of God and that support through prayer. It's a mysterious thing. But it's, to go deeper and to know that God is not going to be outdone. If he asks us to take on a heavier yoke, he's also going to support it.
The yoke is easy. The burden is light.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be visiting with Bishop Joensen as we take a look back at his first 4 years as Bishop of the Diocese of Southwest Iowa. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Edible Arrangements, for their support, offering fruit bouquets and gourmet dip chocolate treats. On the go or have it delivered for that special occasion, ediblearrangements.com.
When you give God your time, He changes your life forever.
Catholic Radio to me is the beacon of truth. I just thank God you guys are out there. For the people who give to Catholic Radio, you are making a difference.
It's the Fall Fundraiser on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. And on today's show, we're grilling Bishop Joensen on his first
Mercy,
years.
please.
Well, I remember, the early interviews that we had with you, and it's like, oh, you think you're going to remember all of these little details about who our new bishop is going to be. And you forget. It's like, oh, he's from Ames and he taught at Loras, and that's about all I got.
But the small stuff, that resume portfolio. I mean, a lot of that's been withdrawn from the diocesan website with good reason, because we want to focus on who we are now, some of the other opportunities in terms of serving the Conference of Bishops, with the Committee on Education and the Domestic Justice and Human Development. But no, again, Ames, and again, my mom's still there, and one sibling, two siblings in Iowa, and another one, actually 3 siblings in Iowa, and one in Pennsylvania now, Mark and his son Liam, my godson in Pennsylvania. But the role with the spiritual direction, the director of spiritual formation for seminarians, and of course some of the priests of our diocese who were under my guidance and formation, and hopefully I accompanied them. And
so are they having any issues?
Browbeat them. Yeah. No, and that is to their credit, you know. And in some ways, they've been, I think, great witnesses to other priests in the diocese who didn't know me, who didn't have that background, saying, you can go talk to Joensen. If there's a point of contention or something that you're not pleased about, or something that you'd like him to look at things from a different light, it's not gonna bite back, and so
it's not going to go on your permanent record,
right? No, and so I really appreciate that we're adults and we can engage as brothers in Christ, and I think you can open and stretch me, but I'm also probably going to return the favor at times, and in that I think that's where the Holy Spirit's to be found. So I've appreciated those who have served, and of course on the diocesan staff as well, who John Wynn among them are now director of social justice. So it's a beautiful thing, but and I always had opportunities to be in rural parishes, and serving in rural parishes on the side, one cluster for 5 years, others in the perimeter. And I knew that was where, the faith is grounded. I think that sense, I've always said, that engineers and farmers are ontological realists. They just have a sense, the world isn't just meant to be bent our way. We have to be docile and ultimately, submit ourselves to things greater than ourselves, ultimately because they come from the hand of God, who's established a beauty and an order that, yes, we are to bring forth and multiply great fruits for everyone. I think, in that spirit of Pope Francis, the Feast of St. Francis is coming up as well, but care for our common home, and we're looking for his next encyclical to come out here in October. I think building upon what he has already shared with us in the message of Laudato Si. And so I think that helps to form me. Farmers can smell fertilizer. They know what that's like, and they can smell it when it comes from the pulpit, too. So it was a great way. It kept one humble and honest, and yet I always felt a sense of connection and that, that beautiful humanity, but to live and suffer with people, too. So, I think experiences such as I've had most recently, just meeting with the 5 candidates for confirmation at St. Patrick Irish Settlement. Yeah. And these are, young people who, maybe not in that large, either parochial or public urban high school environment. Right. But, just the marvelous insights in the witness to faith. That's, I think, one of those places where I just feel the Spirit, when you can get those conversations going. It may be in some way that I'm the point person who's supposed to, help guide or form. Obviously, we are great catechists and faith formation people. But in that moment, I am both teacher and successor of the apostles, but can that be a catalyst for these mini Pentecost events, where an insight that they have, I mean, they've got the Holy Spirit, they've been baptized into Christ. And I think, can you, as Jesus did, provide these occasions? He provided occasions when other spirits came forward, and I think we have to be able to name that sometimes, that being a bishop and a public person who is an ambassador of the gospel, that not everyone's going to be well disposed to things that we say. And so I think there has to be a certain apostolic courage and fortitude, what Pope Francis will call that parousia, that evangelical boldness that we want to bring forward. And so, but it's a beautiful thing, I mean, it's always, just as in the classroom days, walking in, okay, Lord, here we go. We're going to do it again, and you better help me.
I've got my notes, but am I really ready?
So walking in front of a group of 16-year-olds, it's a moment of truth. Yeah. And I think God always, most of the time, and sometimes it doesn't flow, and that leaves me scratching my head and praying, what might I do and approach things in a different way. So, yeah.
Bishop, you mentioned Laudato Si, and the other day at the Wednesday Mass, you talked about the Faith and Reason encyclical from JP2, John Paul II.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite encyclical, or would you recommend one that as the faithful, we need to make sure we're reading that
Okay,
one?
And you're speaking specifically with John Paul II, I believe. Are you any of these?
Any of them. There's so many, and you're reading. If you're reading the Catechism, they'll reference this one and that one, and it's like, man, my whole book.
Well, they build on each other,
right.
and they try to show a continuity within the teaching of the Church, and that there is a tradition that it keeps being handed on in a living way, and it's not just, gathering dust on a shelf or a repository electronic database. You mentioned Fides et Ratio. It was a little bit of a test to assemble, but I was fortunate to be invited by Benedictine College in Atchison, where some of our diocesan young people go, fine Catholic higher education institute, where I think people can really grow in their faith without
and
maybe
we'll have
some of the
President
distractions.
Minnis on in the next month.
Okay, there you go. But so, I was reflecting on the enduring wisdom of Fides et Ratio for culture, campus culture, and our greater culture. John Paul's, two wings of faith and reason are the ways by which we ascend to the truth, ultimately, who is God himself. But, when we think about St. John Paul II, one of my favorite works is one of his shortest ones. It's his letter to artists.
Oh, yeah.
And the beauty of that, and, no pun intended there, but, he speaks about the vocation of artists, that they are opening us up. They have a gift that is obviously not just of this world. It's something of inspiration, and that they are themselves can show us a truth of the human condition, even if it's the tragic and exposing the face of evil at times. But whether it's in film, whether it's in matter, stone, art, painting, music, all these other ways. And so the artist knows himself beholden to something that has been, entrusted to him or her. And I just think John Paul really gets it. He doesn't get into too much of the history, but shows how the Church is both a witness and one who, is a reservoir of wonder that emerges, and not just, trying to show cleverness and be, that contemporary art sometimes kind of points to itself more than to something beyond itself. So I think his works on the, ongoing work, participating in that Catholic social justice teaching, Centesimus Annus was a particular one, speaking of man's greatest resource is himself, in the wake of things, building upon Leo XIII. You can't go wrong with any of Benedict XVI's. His trilogy, if you will, although the last one on faith was appropriated by Pope Francis, but his, Spe Salvi, and our saving hope, and Deus Caritas Est. Again, that limpid way in which Benedict XVI writes, he's just... a brilliant man, but
brilliant, yet such an, I wouldn't say an easy read, but very comprehensible, for those of us that don't have 7-syllable words at our fingertips, it was just, it was readable and understandable, and you really felt touched by it. So, yes.
I'll probably be enlisting, Spe Salvi of Pope Benedict. I'll be talking to the seminary community at Conception Abbey around Thanksgiving time. They've asked me to talk about why philosophy, that perennial question that seminarians scratch their head and say, why do I have to do this?
It's why philosophy.
Right. And, the early depiction of Jesus as a philosopher in early Christian art, that the incarnate wisdom that he is. So hopefully we can make the case and open their hearts a little bit too. But John Paul's first one, Redemptor Hominis, the Redeemer of humanity, which he said he had in him already in embryo as he was already elected Pope. And then I think with Pope Francis, any one of his encyclicals, I still like Evangelium Gaudi, that...
So we just have to read all of them.
Well, I mean, the joy of the gospel is a beautiful thing, and his talk about young people. So we'll see what's in store with this most recent one. No doubt there'll be some pithy sound bites because he has a way of that phrase that lodges in our consciousness and informs our prayer.
Bishop, we talked about this 4 years that you've been with us, and it's been a packed 4 years. I mean, taking 2 years of COVID in there, that just threw a wrench in everything. But we've accomplished, we being the diocese under your leadership, regionalization of the Des Moines.
Still a work in progress. Still a work in progress.
The strategic visioning, Eucharistic renewal, the Ignite campaign. And there's probably other things.
We haven't just been sitting eating bonbons or hanging out at the sports bar.
You have bonbons up in your office?
No, we don't. Mellow cream pumpkins, thank you, Angie. She keeps those stocked, But no, it's no. I think even we very early, and I did not prepare the report to the Holy Father in the Vatican of the ad limina visit. That was within 5 minutes to the threshold, and that engagement with His Holiness. With our region bishops, the Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, otherwise known as the Mink region, Region 9, in which we are a part.
Mink.
And it's been really a blessing to get to know the brother bishops here in the Region 9, and they've been most supportive for me as well as we make annual retreat together. But no, I think things that were maybe in motion, the regionalization and trying to bring the pastors together, their own vision and their own kind of parochialism in a good way. They love their particular faith community and trust it to them. And so what does this mean to collaborate institutionally and not just, on a business model, but can there be a new kind of solidarity that sees, whether one has a school in one's own parish or not, that this is a larger mission to which we are all committed, and obviously it plays in also with faith formation too. So,
well, and I think that's the big challenge because I think everyone has maybe not everyone, but there's angst whenever there's change. And from the pastors to the principals or administrators to even the parents and the teachers. It's like, what is this really going to mean? But because sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. You don't see the big picture, or you're not hearing the big picture.
Right, and so we've brought on board already St. Joseph's School, Holy Family School in Dowling. We would look to bring the other 9 schools in the metro region on board, and so that would have another next year. So there's definitely birth pangs with this, and Dr. Dan Ryan is president, but I think always striving for that collaboration, that transparency and accountability, as pastors have to their people, and how can we do that? But we don't just kind of think about the metro region, the Ignite campaign,
right.
Endowments for supportive families that. We'll touch Shelby County, St. Malachy and Creston, St. Patrick and Perry, and of course, one of our flagships, St. Albert Catholic School in Council Bluffs. So I think, all of that stands to benefit. Gene, obviously your work with the CTO, that's another source of funding. And then, my goodness, the education savings accounts, which is going to, I think, open up opportunities, not without some misgivings for some people, but I think the proof will be that it is not going to come at the expense of our public schools. I think, it'll raise all boats, hopefully, and that commitment that we're there. Something that maybe doesn't get attention because some of these things are more internal, but we conducted, with the help of the USCCB Committee on Clergy and Laity, the Office of Clergy and Religious, not getting that name right. Somebody will no doubt correct me on that. But we had a diaconate audit of our permanent diaconate program, half a century really of diaconate ministry in our diocese. So we're well ahead of some places like Wichita or others who only in the last decade or so. But what maybe
when we were in Lincoln, they have one permanent deacon.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And and we're I think in the 70 or 80 range, half of them over 70. But that was a process of about a year and a half, and I think it helped us to look and say, how can we continue to recruit men from rural areas? Where are some of our men who come, part of the Hispanic population? Where's God calling them? And so with Deacon Jim Houston, Deacon Matt Hallbach, who will be on one of our shows here upcoming very quickly, I think we're ever more equipped now to bring this diaconal ministry. We've appreciated the relationship we've had with Conception Abbey, but we're going to be working with the Pontifical College Josephinum. So that's one of those little things behind the scenes. And then the matching, the kind of pairing of both the synod on synodality, the listening, and the process of the universal church, but how strategic visioning and the very listening to our people. Dr. Dan Ebner of St. Ambrose University was our kind of guide and helped to facilitate that for us. And so I think things are happening in the reactivation of the Diocesan Pastoral Council that will help us with pastoral planning going forward. And, you're getting me all wound up here, Jean, but and this is not just hopefully internal church politics or baseball, but something that's going to have ripple effects that will touch all of our people.
Well, when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation with Bishop Joensen. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahans strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org. Thank you, Sarahans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
The next Man Up West Power Lunch is Friday, October 13th at St. Francis of Assisi in West Des Moines. Father Ignatius Mikoji shares his experience of living out the mission of Divine Mercy. Program begins at noon, lunch provided by Chick-fil-A. Registration is encouraged at iowacatholicradio.com.
Iowa Catholic Radio, connecting listeners to Christ every day with people like you.
This is Deacon Roger Poult from St. Francis of Assisi Parish in Marshalltown. Thanks for listening to Iowa Catholic Radio.
Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Okay, Bishop, this last segment's short.
Okay, we'll speak quickly.
We always say that. It's always short. So, one of the things we briefly mentioned was this Eucharistic renewal. Indeed. And you were ahead of the game. I remember when we were talking about doing some Eucharistic renewal, and you started the Monday night adoration at 5 o'clock, and then all of a sudden you're hearing through other channels that there's this big Eucharistic renewal, and I'm like,
well, I'm not going to give myself
is,
credit. I think we're cute in, and thank you, Jean. You're generous, but then, of course, the ways in which the various parishes in our diocese had, St. Augustine's and others, and Eucharistic procession. So this is part of the devotional and the treasury of the church is love surrounding and revolving around the Eucharist. Obviously, we were concerned those brief 2+ months where we were, lean in our sacramental opportunities in the diocese, and I know there are people who still bear wounds from that, maybe a little mistrust, and again in an environment where we were trying to love our people, protect them, and also be faithful at the same time. But how then maybe some people new habits of life, and so I think we still have to continue to encounter them, draw them, the great presence that Jesus has never left us. And so I think coupled with our national Eucharistic revival of 2-3 years, in there, and the parish phase right now. So I think we've seen parishes, faith formation, reflection. I think that public display of our love for Jesus. We had the procession last year from St. John Basilica around to the St. Ambrose this past month. We were going from St. Anthony Church after Mass, going by the farmer's market.
Yeah.
Hey, we got something fresh for you to hear,
right.
Jesus right available. And people were not bemused. They were just kind of struck and mystified, some of them. And I think that might characterize maybe even where some of our own people are, that, okay, this is proclaimed to be Jesus' real body and blood, but what does that mean for me? And, people feeling disconnected. Here's the prime artery of connection for us. And we don't have to be sophisticated theologians. We just accept, with that simplicity of faith, the faith of the little boy at Mass that we were together most recently, who probably 5 years old, 6 years old, and his mom had brought him up in the Eucharist communion line. And he's not yet ready to receive, but this boy is hungry. And he kind of, those hunger pangs, you could almost hear in his groans and little cries after that. But where can we as adults allow ourselves to experience those same hunger pangs? Because I think we are searching for intimacy. We're seeking for some sense that God has not left the building, but is very much invested in us and knows us. But it's not a harsh knowledge. It's a knowledge of kindness and mercy. And so I think the reflections that we have, obviously the trajectory toward the National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis in July 2024 is going to be one of those pivotal moments. But then how does this again inform our daily lives, our lives as communities? And some places are back 100%, in participation. Others have found maybe 70, 75%. But beyond that, there's so many more that, the pandemic aside, how are we engaged? How are we engaging people in East Village? How are we engaging people in the streets of some of our rural communities? And, are we taking the opportunity at the breakfast diner or cafe, not just to show up after Sunday Mass, but where are those conversations leading to invitation? That this is something that will touch and feed us and far beyond. So I got all wound up there about that. And like you said, the time was going to go quickly, Jean, but you're a benevolent interviewer, and we could do this again. But 4 years, at the very same time, for someone to be going through high school or college education. And so that turnover that's there. But you're stuck with me. Here we go. And God willing, another 12 plus years.
That's right. I was saying 15 because,
there you
even though it's 75, when you send your letter, that doesn't mean it gets open and read right away.
That's right. Cardinal O'Malley in Boston will tell you that.
Yeah. Okay. And Bishop Joensen as well. Oh, well, that gives us another episode of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thank you so much, Bishop, for allowing me to interview you and to get to know you a little better. For all of our listeners here in Nebraska and Iowa and Wisconsin, or wherever you may be listening to Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.